So Donald Trump, the president, is on a tweet high this morning. There's about 7 of them. The last one is my favorite. Says, ever since the Boston Red Sox showed up at the White House, he just tweeted this moments ago. Ever since the Red Sox showed up at the White House, they haven't lost a game. He's right about that. They won 5 straight. They swept the Mariners this weekend. So Trump taking credit for the Red Sox recent success. But if you go back to Trump's Twitter timeline, this is 2 days ago, Brian Stelter, that moron from CNN, had tweeted something. And here's Rich Lowry's response. Says, I know he won't do this because obviously the political narrative is important to him and people around him, but Mueller should say, quote, I wrote a 400-page report. That's my testimony. Do with it what you will. And that tweet by Rich Lowry was retweeted just 2 days ago by President Donald Trump himself. His new column is out, Rich Lowry, There Are No Mysteries with Donald Trump, National Review editor. His stuff is syndicated all across the country here at the New York Post. Rich Lowry being retweeted by President Donald Trump. I mean, forget about Bernie and Sid. Now you've really made it.
You like him now.
Yeah.
Actually, it's the second retweet in about a month. So a friend texted me yesterday, you got a cabinet position coming your way, Rich.
You know what's funny? He made one appearance on this show. It was day 5. We replaced Imus in April of 2018. And the 5th day, that Friday, he came on this show. And he tweeted Rich like 7 hours later, congratulations to Bernie and Sid. Great show. Wish you the best of luck. And that tweet from President Trump, where he mentioned Bernie and Sid, it was one of the greatest, for a guy that did coke for 30 years, it was one of the greatest highs I've ever had, ever.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, he has an incredible following, and you immediately feel it. You'll feel the effects for days. People praising you and people also attacking you. So he has that effect.
Right, so dust off your pussy hats, Rich Lowry. We have a constitutional crisis, according to the Democrats, of course, which is laughable. The only crisis is that Trump seems to be on a winning streak, the economy, on collusion, and in my opinion, getting reelected with some of these screwballs out there. So, and by the way, that Mueller, Barr didn't have to release that stupid Mueller report. He really didn't have to. He released 98% of it. The other 2%, as you know, he's precluded from releasing because it's against the law, and the Democrats won't even go down and read the unredacted, the full report. What's going on here?
Yeah, so you read these special counsel regulations. They talk about the special counsel acting like a U.S. attorney. So, in other words, just a standard prosecutor. And they're written to try to avoid what we had in the independent counsel era, which is these independent counsels writing these long narrative reports about people who may not have committed a crime. And that's exactly what Mueller did. And I kind of blame Rod Rosenstein for not exercising the supervision he was supposed to. But Mueller does this, and then there's kind of no political alternative but to release the report. And now they're making an enormous crisis, supposedly, over in the obstruction section. We counted them last week. The grand jury material is what Barr legally can't release. They're blacked out lines, 2 full lines, and 7 partial lines, and 1 footnote in a 200-page volume in the obstruction section. So the idea that they desperately need this material or they don't know what happens in any of this is completely insane. And I think it's classic displacement where they really want to impeach the president. They know that'd be too perilous. Maybe they'll end up doing it anyway, but it's something they want to avoid. So they're just punching in the face the next guy they can, which is Bill Barr.
There are no mysteries with Donald Trump. Read this out of the Salt Lake Tribune, which I really liked it because what you do is you go over all of the stories that seemingly would get Trump into trouble, and you're like, we know it. Like, even with the porn stars, and you mentioned Howard Stern, which is funny, but it's true. Trump, for many, many years, was one of Howard's favorite guests because he would talk about his womanizing. He would even talk about his daughter, quite frankly, in some pervish terms. So there was no real shock when we saw some of these things in and around Donald Trump. Even the $1 billion he lost in business, heck, that may have been $2 billion. It was 1994. Who cares?
Yeah, and I hadn't focused on this, but when the New York Times blockbuster came out with 10 years of his tax information. I went back and he talked about this all the time. Because the screaming chyrons on cable TV where he lost more than $1 billion over 10 years. On the first episode of The Apprentice, he said, I was billions of dollars in debt.
Billions, he said. He made it plural, yes.
Yeah, with plural. And he wrote an entire book about this called The Art of the Comeback, which is about how low he was. And he's obviously made no secret either that he used every tax dodge possible. When Hillary Clinton in one of the debates says, Donald, I think you may not have had any tax liability for years, he's like, yeah, that would make me smart. So,
that's right, he said
exactly,
that.
Yeah.
So I was talking to some guys in the administration the other day, and they just said, this is, he's the most transparent president in history in this sense. What you get in private is what you get in public, and we all know who he is, and there's just going to be no revelation, I think, that changes anyone's view of him. And we've seen this with the Mueller report. We were supposed to be in pins and needles for 2 years. No one's changed their mind a bit.
No, exactly right. And speaking of which, for the first time, former FBI director who Trump fired, James Comey, he threw Strzok and Page, the two FBI agents, under the bus. Of course, they were the ones who he assigned to the Hillary Clinton email investigation and the Trump-Russia investigation. And this is the first time he's ever said something negative about him. Does he sense something coming down the pike as far as an indictment, maybe?
I don't think there's going to be any indictments. I do think there was a Wall Street Journal report last week suggesting this Inspector General report on the sources of the investigation and how 2016 was handled is coming soon, and suggested it's going to focus on some of the surveillance and that maybe these decisions weren't well considered. So I think that's coming, and that potentially could be devastating just in terms of the fact pattern. I don't know whether anyone's going to be guilty of any crimes.
What about this Nancy Pelosi? We've had all these anti-Semitic folks, and just a couple of days ago, once again, something out of Tlaib. We've gotten plenty out of Omar, even Cortez here in New York City. And then she invites this imam, however the hell you say that, to show up and speak to address Congress. It's made one of our local politicians, Lee Zeldin, here very, very angry. We were counting on Nancy Pelosi a couple of weeks ago to bash her own people for anti-Semitism, and then she invites somebody who lavishes in that. That's what he does almost all the time. How is this stuff going on?
Well, in terms of the freshmen, they just have a lot of power, and we saw in the Omar episode that just a forthright condemnation of what you said wasn't going to fly with the Democrats because they're so beholden to identity politics. If you just say, wait a minute, this is unfair, you're criticizing a Muslim woman, they will say, okay, no, forget it, we can't do it. So this is kind of the new religion of the Democratic Party and Trump's nearly everything.
And it really has emboldened these people. I mean, when people were taking, for example, Tlaib to task the last couple of days for talking about a calming effect on the Holocaust, she basically says, hey, F you. That's how I feel. I am not saying I don't like the Jews. Live with it. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, don't twist my words. And I don't know whether you guys saw this exchange between Seth Meyers and Meghan McCain last week.
Of course.
But, it's so...
He was disgusting there.
Yeah, so it's basically the idea if you push back against this, you're endangering their lives. So you can't do it, and you're the one guilty of wrongdoing. And you sort of saw Meghan McCain couldn't, process this.
It was shocking, actually.
Point of view, yeah.
It really was. I mean, a guy broadcasting here from New York, where defending a lady who said some people did something on 9/11. It was really... unbelievable, but not to whip you around too much, Rich Lowry, but I know you can handle it. Joe Biden, this problem here he has with his son, Hunter, and the Ukraine and China conflict of interest. He did business with them and then bragged about it on videotape. Is he in any trouble there?
Well, first of all, I have to say I was just wrong. I never thought Biden would be this strong coming out of the gate. And it's really concerning for those of us who assume the Democratic Party is crazy, as we've just talked about.
He has rendered Bernie Sanders irrelevant already.
Yeah, I mean, Bernie is now down with the rest of the pack. It's Biden and the seven dwarves. So, and I think on paper, no one really knows anything about electability, but on paper, he seems the strongest candidate. So, but this is a classic phenomenon where you can be, a vice president, you can be in the national politics for decades, and there's nothing like the scrutiny of being a presidential candidate. And we saw it with all his touching and Eskimo kissing, and we're seeing it with this. Now, I think it's probably a step removed because it's son, it's not him. But there will be more of these kind of things that either people didn't know about or didn't focus on very much.
Yeah, he'll be fine. Jimmy won with Billy, and Bill won with Roger. Folks, on Rich Lowry, there are no mysteries with Donald Trump. It's in the Salt Lake Tribune. He's a wonderful writer and a great guest every Monday. As always, Rich, grand slam home run. Thank you, buddy.
Hey, thanks so much, guys.
Man.
All right, Rich, we'll take a short break. When we get back, busy sports weekend, 2 Game 7s in the NBA, and the Yankees keep rolling. The Blitz is next.
Bernie and Sid in the morning, 77 WABC.